Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are taking a seriously deep dive into the incredible transformation of the holy city of Mecca. We're going to explore how what started as an isolated, remote valley evolved through centuries of intense spiritual reverence and just sheer architectural ambition into a massive global epicenter. So, let's jump right in. To really wrap our heads around this story, we have to start with a massive contrast. It is almost impossible to reconcile the modern reality of Mecca with its distant past. I mean, historically, this was an entirely empty, deserted, and lonely valley where hardly anyone would ever venture. Yet today, it's transformed into a sprawling, 40-acre religious complex that hosts literally millions of pilgrims from all over the globe. So how exactly did a barren patch of desert become the spiritual anchor for nearly a quarter of the world's population? That's the core mystery we're unpacking today.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the desert origins, explore the beliefs and foundations, chart Mecca's historical journey, take a look at the rebuilding of the Kaaba, and finally walk through the Holy Hajj journey.
Section 1. The Desert Origins. Before we get lost in the sprawling modern megacity, we really need to ground ourselves in the physical reality of the structure at the very heart of it all, the Kaaba.
If you strip away the vast modern complex, the architecture of the Kaaba itself is actually surprisingly modest. It's constructed from solid graphite stone, and it measures exactly 40 feet long and 33 feet wide. It has absolutely no windows and just a single door for entry. It is a very distinct cube-like structure, which makes sense, because that's essentially what the word Kaaba means. It stands there as this profound physical anchor right in the center of the Grand Mosque, known as Masjid al-Haram.
But there's one highly specific feature on this structure that commands unique reverence. Right there on the eastern wall, positioned about 5 feet off the ground, sits the black stone. According to Islamic tradition, this stone is literally not of this world. The belief is that it was brought directly from heaven by the angel Jibril, who you might know in English as Gabriel. The ancient sources recount that when it first arrived, the stone was pure white, but it gradually turned black over time, absorbing the sins of the world as humanity expanded. Today, it serves as the ultimate focal point. Honestly, it's pretty staggering to think that no matter where they are on the planet, all Muslims worldwide face the exact direction of this one specific stone during their daily prayers.
Section 2. Beliefs and Foundations. Now, the physical stone and mortar are really only half the story. To understand Mecca's intense magnetism, we have to look at its deep theological roots. So, who actually built the Kaaba? Well, Islamic tradition holds several fascinating narratives that predate the Prophet Muhammad. Some beliefs state that the Kaaba was initially constructed by angels, and it's said that 70,000 angels still descend to perform the circumambulation, or the tawaf, around it every single day. Another profound narrative centers on the first humans. After Adam and Eve, or Hawa, were separated and sent to Earth, tradition says they wandered for years before finally reuniting in Mecca. Overcome with gratitude to Allah, Adam built a structure to worship right there. Later on, Islamic tradition notes that the Prophet Ibrahim, alongside his son Ismail, rebuilt the structure, originally constructing it as a roofless rectangular building. These deeply ingrained foundational stories are what originally gave this desert valley such intense spiritual gravity.
Section 3. Mecca's historical journey. So, how exactly did a site of ancient religious lore evolve into a bustling hub of civilization?
While the turning point in the historical record points to a highly strategic administrator, historians largely credit a guy named Qusay for transforming Mecca from just a purely religious site into a formidable commercial hub. Qusay essentially stepped up and declared himself king. He brilliantly organized the city by bringing in his Quraysh relatives to settle the area. But here's the real game changer. He implemented a system to tax arriving pilgrims and took absolute administrative control over the city's vital resources, namely the food and the sacred Zamzam water. Qusay laid down the crucial administrative and economic groundwork that allowed Mecca to physically sustain its rapidly growing spiritual importance.
And all of this set the stage for an explosive century of change. In 620 CE, the Prophet Muhammad began his profound journey, receiving the message of Islam. By 630 CE, after a period of exile in Medina, he returned and the Kaaba was firmly established as the central place of Islamic worship. In 632 CE, the Prophet performed his final Hajj, setting the exact precedent for all future pilgrimages. As the religion started spreading like wildfire, the infrastructure obviously had to adapt. Between 644 and 656 CE, Caliph Uthman initiated major expansions around the Kaaba to accommodate the faithful. But, as we see at the end of this era in 683 CE, the history of this site is definitely not without profound disaster. A massive fire ended up completely destroying the wooden structure of the Kaaba that stood at the time.
Section 4. Rebuilding the Kaaba. The massive structure we see today is actually the result of immense resilience and constant reconstruction.
A really crucial point to remember here is that the Kaaba was entirely vulnerable to the elements and to human conflict. Before that fire, it had actually been severely compromised by devastating floods, but the massive destruction really came in 683 CE. During a fierce civil war between Caliph Abd al-Malik and Ibn Zubayr, the wooden structure of the Kaaba caught fire and was completely leveled. It was a devastating moment for sure, but it led to a total rebuild, this time strictly following the original architectural design attributed to the Prophet Abraham. It was also during these turbulent periods that the surrounding mosque began to take on a much more permanent shape.
Now let's fast forward through centuries of careful maintenance until we hit a massive turning point, the year 1950. As global travel suddenly became accessible, the number of pilgrims surging into Mecca absolutely skyrocketed. The year 1950 marks the beginning of an era of unprecedented, monumental structural changes to the Grand Mosque and the Kaaba's surroundings, all designed to safely handle this massive influx of humanity. This specific era brilliantly illustrates the modern evolution of the site's wealth and self-sufficiency. For a very long time, the Kaaba featured a wooden door, and the kiswa, that iconic black cloth that beautifully drapes the structure, was traditionally manufactured in and imported all the way from Egypt. But post-1982, we see a striking modernization. A solid gold door was installed on the Kaaba, and the production of the kiswa was moved in-house, now manufactured directly in Saudi Arabia with incredible, exquisite craftsmanship. The site was really reflecting the massive economic boom of the surrounding region.
And today, the sheer scale of modern Saudi infrastructure dedicated to the pilgrimage is honestly staggering. Take the stunning Prophet's Mosque in Medina, for instance, the second holiest city in Islam. Expansions like this began in the mid-20th century and have resulted in these vast complexes that kind of defy imagination. Today, the Grand Mosque in Mecca sprawls over 40 acres. It is a true architectural marvel, and it's designed with one singular purpose: to host millions of worshippers safely and seamlessly, all at the exact same time.
Section 5. The Holy Hajj Journey. All of this history, all of this sprawling architecture, it all exists to facilitate one of the most incredible human gatherings on the planet.
Hosting millions of people in a span of just a few days is no small feat. Think about it. It requires an awe-inspiring level of administration. A massive portion of Mecca's permanent population works year-round just on the logistics of the Hajj. Literally everything, from securing enough food and water, managing complex transportation, to ensuring the safety of the massive crowds during the rituals, has to be systematically organized down to the very last detail. It is a continuous monumental cycle of preparation.
So what does this journey actually look like for the person doing it? Let's walk through the core steps. Step 1 actually begins before they even arrive. Pilgrims enter a state of purity by wearing the ihram. This is a seamless, completely unstitched white cloth, symbolizing absolute equality before God, sort of like a shroud. Step 2 is the tawaf. Upon arriving in Mecca, they perform the circumambulation, circling the Kaaba while reciting prayers. Step 3 takes them out to the plains of Arafat, where they perform the symbolic stoning of the devil, casting pebbles at designated pillars. And finally, Step 4 involves the cutting of hair to mark the fulfillment of the Qurbani, which is the sacrifice duty. By completing these incredibly dense historical rituals, a Muslim fulfills one of the fundamental pillars of their entire faith.
Now, it's also vital to note the strict regulations surrounding the city itself. To preserve the immense sanctity and the exclusive spiritual focus of this life-altering pilgrimage, the holy city of Mecca strictly prohibits entry to non-Muslims. This rule ensures that the massive infrastructure, and really the city itself, remain entirely dedicated to those who are there to fulfill this sacred, deeply personal religious obligation.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, it leaves us with an incredible thought to ponder. How does a single, relatively small, 40-foot cube-shaped structure survive devastating fires, massive floods, and the rise and fall of empires over centuries, only to emerge as the unshakable focal point uniting millions of people from every corner of the globe every single year? The history of Mecca is just a profound testament to the power of human faith paired with incredible administrative resilience. Thanks so much for exploring this journey with me, and keep questioning the fascinating world around you.